Let's talk about the best business model to get you a six-figure solopreneur web design business. So, there's a lot of things that have changed lately, and I constantly find myself talking about the differences. But one of the things we don't hit on too much is what impact that has on your business model, like how you go about attracting clients, what's the price that you charge, what's your marketing look like. And we began to tap into this a little bit last week when we talked about the whole idea of not selling services but selling outcomes, and had that whole the whole analogy about Home Depot and the concept of you don't just want to sell the tools, you want to sell the houses. And so if you haven't seen that one, check out last week's weekly workshop and you'll see the difference between this whole service-driven versus outcome-driven marketing approach. But what I want to talk about today is what's better? Is it better to go high volume or better to go high ticket? Because there's pros and cons with both. High volume means that you usually have a low ticket price point to your work. And so, maybe you're only charging $500, but you're doing a lot of work. Like you can just crank out sites really quick. You've got a streamlined workflow. And what if you could just do a site every day or something like that at $500? And the lower price point makes it feel like you have access to more people because more people can afford less expensive work. And so now your audience and your leads are perhaps more forthcoming because, hey, Steve, good to see you. Because there's just a bigger audience of people that can afford $500 websites compared to how many people who can afford $5,000 websites or $15,000 websites. But on the other side of the coin, it's like, well, what if you go high ticket? Well, then you don't have to find so many leads all the time, but you sort of maybe you've shrunk down your audience because not everybody can spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a website. So what's the best approach? And that's what I wanted to talk about today, because it used to be different, and now we have a new set of factors to consider with all of this. And I think you're going to find it really eye-opening, because the old way to win web design work is dramatically different from how you do it today. So let me ask you a couple questions to kind of get our momentum going. And the first question is, like, what do you feel like is like the number one thing that you need right now? So like if I were to say, like, even like type in the comments below and just kind of say, what do you think you feel like the number one thing it is that you need? Because a lot of times, like when we get on the phone and we start talking about this stuff, I'll say, where do you want to be, in terms of your revenue, in terms of the work you're doing, the types of clients you're working on. And then, people will tell me kind of what their goals are. And then I say, well, what do you feel like is holding you back? And most of the time people will say the number one thing that they need is leads. Like, yeah, I just need more leads. If I could get like a steady flow of people willing to pay the prices I want to charge, that's what I'm really after. That's the main thing holding me back. And what I want to say today is that if you feel like that, like if you feel like the number one thing that's preventing you from making the progress that you want is not having a consistent, steady flow of leads, then I want to suggest that you might be building an old business model around your business. Like you might have a foundation that's kind of outdated. And let me kind of point out why. The biggest reason why is generating leads and building a consistent, steady flow of leads is the most time-intensive, expensive thing that you can do by far. Like there's very little that you can do that takes more time and money than trying to build that lead flow. And so what that's going to mean is you're going to have a lot of time. Like your ratio between billable time and non-billable time is going to quickly get out of whack. So for example, just ask yourself this: like, how much time did you spend yesterday doing billable work as opposed to non-billable work? And if thinking about it in terms of a day is too narrow, okay, well, what about last week? Okay, how much time last week did you spend doing billable work versus non-billable work? And when you look at the non-billable work, what did you spend it doing? Like, I'm guessing it was probably finding leads, fiddling around on social media, writing blog posts, or, trying to get some content marketing going, or emailing people, cold emailing, cold calling, like all the different things that you could be doing to try to attract new business, writing proposals for free, doing free site reviews, just doing something to bring value to people. But generally speaking, it's free. Like you're not billing for that time compared to how much time you actually spent doing billable work for clients. So take a look at that ratio. Like, how much time did you spend last week doing billable work? How much time did you spend doing non-billable work? And then think, oh, well, heck, what if you flipped it? What if the ratio is the opposite? And your non-billable work was suddenly billable work, and your billable work was the stuff you were doing for free, where would that put you in terms of the revenue that you generated last week or last month? And most of the time, people will say that vastly more of their time goes into the non-billable side. And if you could flip that ratio, then that would make a world of difference. And so that should be a red flag that, hey, wait a second, the business model, like the structure that you have for building your business is dramatically out of whack if you find that you're spending so much more of your time doing the free work, doing like trying to find leads, trying to get clients, trying to do all that non-billable stuff. And so wouldn't it be better if you could have more of your time doing the actual, work that you got paid for? So of course, then you could actually be doing, driving better results for clients too. So what I want to say today is that with all of the changes that have taken place, that I believe that the high volume, low cost business model for solopreneur web designers is dead. It's not dead for everybody. And that's one of the things I want to talk about. The reason why the high volume, low ticket business model is dead for web designers is because of really two things that have come out over the past maybe 5 years or so, but specifically even maybe the past 2 years. And one of them is all of the low-cost alternatives. Like all of the low-cost alternatives are eating your lunch, right? Like for example, there's the site builders, like there's Wix and Weebly and Squarespace, and and they're pretty good. Now keep in mind that what I'm talking about is solopreneurs, or maybe you work with one or two other people, so like small web design businesses where you want to work directly with clients and you want to do two things kind of at the same time. It's not just cranking out technical work, it's also doing like business development and marketing and having the technical chops to kind of pull it all together. So that's what I'm talking about. And the problem is all of these low-cost alternatives are causing a couple of issues. The biggest one is all the business owners have this expectation that everything is going to be cheap now, because if you're more expensive than Wix is or whatever, then why don't they just go to Wix and get a site over there? Or if you're more expensive than the guys on Upwork or whatever, then they can just go over there as an alternative. Now, maybe the relationship is such that they'd be willing to spend a little more. Like if you're charging $1,200 and maybe they could get something on Upwork or whatever for $1,000, maybe that $200 difference is better and worth it because they know you and you're kind of, you have that relationship, whatever. But if you're going to be charging like $5,000 or $10,000 and someone else is charging like $800, that's not going to work. So the low-cost alternatives are keeping the price points down. And everybody has this expectation that websites are cheap because you can get them for cheap on Upwork. There's people advertising right here on Facebook for like, $50 WordPress sites. Now, granted, they're not very good, right? Like they're not obviously a professionally built, certainly not custom coded or anything like that. But in the mind of the client, you have to think about it in the mind of the client, what they think they're getting out of it. And they probably think, hey, I want a website. It needs to look pretty decent. It's got to work on mobile devices. I probably need an SSL certificate. A lot of people know about security now. And, I want to be able to kind of, edit and kind of change things whenever I need to. And you can do that on Wix. You can do that on Squarespace. And so if you're offering a similar outcome where you have this basically same concept going on, where there's a website now and a couple of pages, and you're kind of putting the content that they want on there, and you're not really contributing any to like the marketing or the business development or the strategy, you're just kind of providing the website, then and that's of course what high volume low ticket is. Like you can't provide the strategy and the consulting and the in-depth help at a low ticket price because it takes too much time. Like you can't invest that heavily. So if you're in the business of high volume, like you're doing a lot of different sites and it's pretty low priced, then you just can't really offer a significant difference in outcome compared to what people get on Upwork and on Fiverr and all these other places. So if you try to charge more, then you price yourself out of the market. And so that's there's two main things. One of the main things is it keeps this whole low cost alternative thing is keeping the price down really, really low. And you can't break out of it in the high volume business model. And then here's the second thing, and this is a big thing. So the marketing, it's like if you find that you can't attract leads anymore, it's not a big surprise because you're probably trying to attract the same leads that Wix is trying to attract for their business, or that Weebly or Squarespace is trying to attract for their business. And how are you supposed to compete for that? Squarespace just ran a Super Bowl ad. How can you compete against a company that's going to spend $5.5 million for a 30-second spot in the Super Bowl? Like, what are you going to do? Who are you going to reach? How can you reach people like that? So Wix and Squarespace and like all of these other giants in the marketplace are sucking all of the air out of the room. And so like when you go out there and try to run a Facebook ad for a website, or you try to run a Google ad for a website, or for branding, or for a logo or something like that, you just can't win like that. It's too expensive. And the people like Wix and like Squarespace and like all of these giant businesses, or even Upwork, like Upwork is advertising, hey, if you need a website, we've got the people that can hook you up. Like, how do you compete on the same stage with people who literally have millions upon millions of dollars? And here you are. What are you going to do? It's like you can't do anything about that. And so when you find that, man, there's just no clients, I just can't find the clients, I can't build the lead flow, this is why. And this is a new thing. It wasn't like this before, right? This is something that's really evolved over the past few years. So because of those two reasons, because the low price expectations are there, and because you just can't compete in a marketing space where literally you're competing against people spending millions upon millions of dollars for the same people, right? Because you're trying to attract the same people. Like the Wix and the Squarespace people, they're trying to attract small businesses that need a website, that want it to be affordable, and they don't want to have to pay a bunch for hosting and security and backups and maintenance. And they've got that package, and it's really nice. And it's better than a WordPress package, right? Because with WordPress, you have to pay for hosting and backups and security and plugin updates and maintenance. And you have to have that care plan in order just to keep the site healthy. And with Wix and Squarespace and those types of platforms, you don't really need that. So not only are these platforms spending way more money than you are on the marketing, they also have a better story to tell about what they're giving to the client. And so so you have to make a shift. You have to think, okay, well, what can I do to refocus my business structure so that as a solopreneur running a web design business, you could generate a 6-figure income? And so that's obviously going to mean you have to go high ticket. You can't stay with high volume. Because as we just talked about, like high volume is basically gobbled up now by the giant, players like Wix and Squarespace, but also, people that maybe, they don't want to build a site themselves. And so they just go into Upwork or Fiverr or Craigslist or look at a Facebook ad. I mean, there's just so many people that will build sites for free. So the low cost idea is out there. The marketing, all the air is sucked out of the room. So you can't go high volume. You have to go high ticket. And so you're thinking, okay, well, I can do better, right? So you're thinking you can do better than somebody who is just trying to build their own site on Wix, right? Because you have professional skills and you spent years developing those skills. So it's obviously higher value to your client to have access to you and your skills compared to just trying to do something on their own. And that's 100% true. And another thing that's also true is Wix is not really that great when it comes to like SEO and lead generation and really trying to leverage your online presence to do anything other than maybe just put up a brochure. Like even if you're trying to get into like e-commerce or things like that, it gets really hairy really fast if you don't know what you're doing. Like it's not even necessarily Wix's fault, although it kind of is Wix's fault, but it's really the fact that most of the people using those platforms don't really know what they're doing. And so it's kind of combination of everybody's fault. And it's just really difficult to get success out of these cheap kind of build it yourself kind of platforms when you're trying to really do something about that. And that's totally true, which is going to be totally bad. So one of the things that you have to offer that people aren't getting from these platforms or from people on Upwork is the fact that these platforms are not really good at generating results. And then the third big thing is that your experience. Your experience is really valuable. Not just your technical experience, but your strategy, your business development, the consulting, like helping people with their marketing and their branding, and like giving people ideas that they otherwise wouldn't have had if they were by themselves because you've been at it for a while. That's those three big things. So your skills, the fact that Wix really isn't designed to really do anything other than maybe just a brochure kind of a site, and and then your business experience. Like those three things, you should be able to say, okay, these are really important things that really drive better outcomes than people can get by themselves on Squarespace or whatever. Or even if they went to like Upwork and said, hey, here's what I need, they wouldn't really be able to ask for what they need because they don't know what they need, right? Like the whole point is your experience is one of the things that's significantly better than not having your experience. And so you need to have all of that kind of bundled together into one thing. And then you think, well, okay, well, now that's more valuable, so I can just raise my price. But the problem with that is you can't just raise your price. If you just raise your price, then you get back into the situation like we were talking about before, where you're kind of competing with the high volume, kind of low ticket people. It's just that you're more expensive now because you're out there still kind of saying, hey, I give you a website, I can give you a logo, I can do better branding. And so most of the time, the people that I talk to haven't really managed to package those three high ticket elements together in a way that resonates with their clients. And this is where the business structure shift really comes into play. So it's not just raising your price, and it's not just thinking about yourself as better than these big platforms or whatever, because that's not enough. It's not that you need to think of yourself as better. Your client needs to understand that you're better. And then a lot of people will say, hey, well, let me go teach them. Let me go teach the clients why I'm better. And then, so that looks like, well, let me teach you what responsive design means and why you need an SSL certificate and all the different new stuff that's going on that Google's doing with SEO so that you get, these better rankings and stuff. And the problem is nobody cares. They don't want to learn that stuff. They can't really be taught very effectively. And furthermore, to get to the point where you're doing the teaching means that you've already connected with the leads. And that's one of the big problems. It's like, how do you get that lead flow? So now what we've got is a situation where you're thinking, well, building that lead flow is going to be really, really expensive, both in terms of money and time. In terms of money, because you're competing with like huge people spending millions of dollars running Super Bowl ads, but also in terms of time, because you have to put the work in to compete with all of that stuff. And if your time is doing that stuff, where do you find the time to actually do the billable work? And that's really the whole problem. Like you've built a structure where you can't win. You just can't win. It's not going to happen. And so you have to have some time to do the billable work. And what you really want is most of your time doing billable work. But in order to build that lead flow and this kind of outdated business model we've been talking about, all your time goes into that, which means that you can't win. You've got a situation that's not going to pan out. And not only is it not going to pan out today, it's going to keep getting worse as these problems that we just talked about continue to grow and scale. Like, Wix isn't going anywhere. Squarespace isn't going to stop running Super Bowl ads. And so you're going to have to do something to be able to take advantage of those three high ticket elements that are a significant part of your business that are probably just sort of sitting on the shelf right now. Again, it's your professional skills that you've probably spent years developing. It's going to be the fact that Wix really isn't going to generate results. And it's going to be the fact that your client really needs more like online marketing and business experience that you can provide that they don't have in order to get results. And so now we're really beginning to tap into what we talked about last week about the fact that you're not just selling services, you're selling outcomes. And the point, one of the main points from last week was when you go around, say you go to Home Depot and you're walking down through the aisles and everything, you can buy all the stuff that you need at Home Depot to build an entire house. That was the point that we were making last week. It's like, everything that you need, walls, windows, toilets, and sinks, and doors, and everything that you need, the electrical wires, the plumbing, like all of that stuff is for sale at Home Depot. But nobody's walking around inside of Home Depot with a budget of a couple $100,000 to buy a house. No one's even shopping for houses. And that's the big shift. So instead of buying, it's kind of selling yourself as like a Home Depot for web design where you have branding and marketing and websites and logos and whatever, like you just have this, aisles and aisles of things that you could be doing. The concept is don't sell the individual services, put it together and sell the house. And so if you wanted to get into the business of selling walls and doors and windows and plumbing and electrical wiring and all of those things, but you didn't want to start competing against giants like Home Depot and Lowe's and all the home improvement stores or whatever, but you still wanted to sell the same types of things, the way that you do it is you shift your market. And that, of course, means you also shift your business structure. And that's why I wanted to talk today about the business structure, because last week we talked about the market. Today we're talking about the business structure, because what you do is you sell houses, and then you market to people who are shopping for houses. And when someone buys a house from you, you actually are selling them windows and walls and doors and plumbing and all the same things that you could be selling in the context of home improvement. You've now packaged together in the shape of a house, which means that it's much higher ticket, right? Like you're selling things that are hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just $20. And so that's the big shift. And so last week we talked about the marketing, about you don't just sell the raw resources, you sell the outcome, the house. And today, what that means is that has implications on the structure of your business so that you can actually have the time to do the work. And so the big point today is, you don't want to get into a situation where you have to constantly be generating leads all the time and looking for the next project and looking to, create this lead flow. Because when you do that, you're not going to have the business structure in place to actually spend the time doing the work. If you are trying to be a kind of like a solopreneur or like 2 or 3 people working together as a web design firm. Now, if you're a giant, like if you're a huge corporation, obviously that's a totally different story, because you have more people, you can divide up the labor, and all of these other factors come into play that don't come into play when you're trying to do it all by yourself or with 1 or 2 other people. So if you realize that, okay, well, I can't spend all my time marketing, what do I really need to do instead? And obviously you have to raise your prices, but you can't just raise your prices. You also have to change the outcomes. And so those are the 2 pieces of your puzzle that you move together. And so not only are you saying, hey, it's going to cost more, but you're also saying, I'm selling the house. And the implication now is you have a fundamentally different business structure in place. And it really comes down to 3 things that you need to make the shift. The first thing that you need is the tools and skills to drive results for people. Because the thing that people are missing, whether it's on Upwork or Fiverr or whatever, or if they try to go build their own site on Wix or Squarespace, is like they don't know what it takes to actually get outcomes, to get results, to get calls booked and leads coming in and traffic coming in and brand visibility, like outcomes like that, like tangible business outcomes. The first thing you need to do is make sure that you have the ability to feel comfortable and confident in driving results for people. And so you need the tools and skills to drive results. The second thing you need to do is you need to change your marketing message so that you're attracting clients looking to spend higher price points. And again, the analogy was, you don't want to be marketing to people walking down the aisles of Home Depot. You want to be marketing to people who are looking to buy a house. So in other words, you don't want to be marketing to people who are saying, hey, I wish I had a better logo, or I wish I had a better looking website, or man, I could really use I don't know what else, whatever skills you offer. You want people that want all of that at the same time and all of your best stuff. And so you have to change your story to attract clients like that. And so it's a fundamental shift. So you're not marketing over here anymore. Now you're marketing over here. So it's a different audience, a different message. You're attracting different clients. You're thinking of yourself differently. Your clients are thinking of who you are differently. They're not thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to go hire Julie because she's going to give me a website. You're thinking, oh, I need to go hire Julie because I need a better business. That's a huge difference shift. And so that's the second thing that you need, is the marketing story shift. And then the third thing that happens that's kind of an outcome of those 2 other shifts is now you have a business structure where you don't have to find clients all the time, because you have high ticket, long-term clients, meaning that they're high ticket, meaning that you're charging the rates that you need to make a difference for people, but it's long-term in the sense that it's not one and done projects. You're not only setting your client up with the tools that they need to be successful. Remember, the very first thing we talked about was you have to have the tools and skills to drive results. So not only are you setting that up, but you're also driving the results month after month. And so you're doing 2 things at once now. So you have this business consulting component to your business where you bring in the strategy and the experience that clients really need to have outcomes. And you can do the technical stuff to kind of implement that stuff along the way. So what that means is you've got these high ticket, long-term clients. And so the last thing that I want to leave you with is this word of encouragement, because it's very exciting. Because if you tap into these details that we're talking about right now, you will fundamentally transform your business in a dramatic way almost overnight. Because again, you're talking to an entirely new audience of people looking to spend money. And here's the truth. The truth is, we've gotten to a point today, probably kind of almost for the first time, where it's super easy for anyone to have a website. Back in the day, like back when I first got started doing this, like 20 years ago, building websites was the thing. Like just having the website made a big difference. Today, we've gotten to a point where anybody can have a website, even basically for free, like on Wix or whatever. But, and this is a gigantic but, we've given up results to get there. That's the whole thing. Anybody can have a website today. Very few people are getting results out of their online properties. So if you can come along and make those 3 changes and get the tools and skills that actually do drive results, change the way that you think about yourself and describe yourself and how you actually interact with your clients and what it is that you actually deliver, so you change that marketing story, and then you give yourself a business structure that can succeed because you've got the time to spend working for your clients rather than trying to find your clients, then those 3 things, if you tap into that, you are dramatically different. You're charging way more than everybody else because you're not offering what everyone else is. Everybody else is selling stuff in the aisles of Home Depot for $20. You're selling houses for hundreds of thousands. That's the big shift. So you're charging more, you're jumping out of the noise, like you're not racing around in that whole, rat race, price dropping race to the bottom. It's like you're not in the mix like that anymore because you're not just pushing services on people who probably don't think they're going to get any results out of them anyway, which is why they're not investing in them at any high ticket price. So you're like a breath of fresh air. You're like the sun coming up at night. It's like it changes everything. And then the other thing is, you're continuing to work with them. Like you're not just abandoning them after you build the website. And so when you put those things in place, now you've got a foundation. You have a structure that will enable you to, realistically, you can make about $80,000 to $120,000 a year by yourself. That's basically the pattern. And depending on where you are in the country and what the rates are in the different cities and stuff where you live in, it fluctuates a little bit. That's why I give it the 80 to 120. That kind of a range. If you want to scale beyond $100,000 and $120,000, then what you need to do is bring in somebody to help you with something that otherwise would take some time. Like for example, you might want to outsource bookkeeping, or you might want to outsource some of the maintenance work, or some of the non-strategy, non-business development stuff that you can bring on some help. And so if you do that, like I'm working with a couple of double stackers that are in like the $300,000 range, and of course, the way they do it is they have help. They've got people helping with, one guy hired a graphic designer, another and a bookkeeping person, and so between the 3 of them, they're able to just crush it. And so that's a realistic, reasonable expectation in terms of what you can make when you make this shift. If you don't make this shift, a reasonable expectation of what you can make is probably in the $2,000 to $3,000 per month range, meaning you'll probably make somewhere between $24,000 to $35,000 per year, something like that. And it's going lower and lower. Like if you look back at the stats, like if you look at like the Stack Overflow report, or even what they say on Upwork about what the average WordPress site costs or whatever, you're going to see it goes down and down and down and down. And the reason it keeps going down is because of all the stuff we just talked about. It's like clients have this low expectation of price. There's low cost alternatives all over the place. There's the marketing of all these giants like Squarespace. Everything's just pushing everything in the wrong direction in terms of price for people like us who are trying to run web design businesses kind of out of our homes, or with 1 or 2 other people, that kind of a thing. So if you want to shift that, and so you want to change that to where you're bringing in a 6-figure income for yourself, rather than burning yourself out like $2,000 or $3,000 per month, then these are the shifts that you need to make in order to kind of implement these changes into your business. So hopefully that makes some sense. Hopefully that kind of is eye-opening, where if you think that the number one thing that you need is more leads, you're probably doubling down on an outdated business model. So instead of doing that, why not make these 3 shifts where you actually can bring higher value to your clients, you bring in more revenue for yourself, and ultimately everybody wins in that way, because since you're charging more and you're sticking with your client, that's going to give you both the time and the money to be able to really do your best work. And of course, when you're doing your best work, you're driving the best outcomes for your clients. And of course, now everybody wins. So that's the big thing. Everybody's got a website, but we've really given up results to kind of get to that point. And so if you can show up bringing the results back to the table, that fundamentally changes everything. That's the difference between high volume versus high ticket. It's going to give you a business structure that's going to be successful for you. So now, if you want to talk about exactly how to implement that into your business specifically, in terms of your skills, your interest, where you live in the country, what price point you're looking for, how much time you have to be spending on all of this. Like sometimes I'll work with people that are just doing this part-time, which is totally cool. And at a part-time rate, I would think that you could make somewhere between $40,000 to $70,000 a year, something like that. And then you can kind of ease into it full-time and keep ranking it up from there. So if you want to talk about that, head over to doublestack.net/call and you'll see my calendar and we can kind of get on the phone and talk about all this stuff specifically for you. And what we'll do is we'll put together a step-by-step plan to really dial all of this stuff in together. So head over to doublestack.net/call. You'll see my calendar, pick a time that works well for you. And we'll spend about 45 minutes for free really talking about, well, what are the revenue goals that you have? Like, where do you want to be financially? And then we'll say, well, what do you need to charge? And how many clients do you need at that price point to hit that goal? And is it realistic to think that that would happen for you? Or do we need to change some things? Do we need to add something? Do we need to rethink the way that you spend your time? Do we need to streamline some part of your workflow? Like, what do we need to do to make that happen for you? And then we'll put that plan in place. And then you've really got yourself in a situation where, hey, either way, no matter what you do, it's going to be hard. I'm not trying to say that, this is a quick win. Everybody has instant success and you don't even have to try. You have to try. It's hard work. But the point is, if you're going to be putting in hard work, why not make sure that you put it into something that's going to be fruitful as opposed to something that's just going to burn you out because it's not sustainable? That's the big shift, because either way, it's going to be work. So wouldn't it be nice to have the pattern in place so that hey, if I apply myself in this direction, I'm actually going where I want to go, as opposed to if I apply myself in this direction, I'm actually just making things worse. And on top of that, surround yourself with other people that are doing what you want to be doing. And that's a really big thing. And I talk about this a lot. I talk about this DoubleStack 5-figure family trophy. And the reason that I bring this up so often is because this is a really cool goal. And like when you land a $10,000 client, I'm going to mail this trophy to you. You're going to put it on your desk and everybody in the DoubleStack Facebook group is going to high five you and it's going to be awesome. And so that's the kind of environment you want to be in, is surround yourself by people who are doing that and having that level of success so that you can get swept up in that momentum and do it too. And then make sure that you have the resources so you know what to say when you get to a client meeting and you've got somebody to help you look through your proposals and make sure that it's feeling like a really solid business plan where you're really developing somebody's business for them and coming along with really great, technical skills to implement that level of success for them. And that's where you and I work together on all of that. That's what DoubleStack's all about. Really giving you all of the resources you need, the community, the support, the mentoring to really be successful at making this shift. So if that sounds good to you, head over to doublestack.net/call. Find my schedule, pick a time that works for you, and then we'll make all this stuff happen together. Awesome. Well, it's great talking to you. High ticket versus high volume was the idea today. And would love to talk to you more about this kind of one-on-one. So head over to doublestack.net/call, pick a time that works for you, and we'll make it happen. So great talking to you. High five. Boop. And look forward to catching up again next week.